This is definitely going to be one of the more harder videos to make because you're really judging off players you've only seen play in under 18s and for, Vic Metro, Vic Country, etc., etc. And you're now going to have to give the teams who drafted these players a grade on how you think they went with, again, minimal knowledge. No one really knows how all of these players are going to go in the AFL, but you know what? I don't mind a bit of controversy sometimes. I literally challenged, that bloke, whatever his name is, from Facebook to a boxing match. Scoops, I think it is. Again, if you're watching your Scoops, man, you were too close to Monique Conti that one time. That is my future wife, and I think we're going to have an absolute problem if you do that again. So, boxing match against Scoops maybe. If anyone wants to say that, let me know down below. But of course, I figured, we'll spark a bit of controversy today, and I'm going to grade all the AFL teams on how I think they went in the draft and just legitimately see, and give you guys my thoughts and opinions on it all. Because for the most part, I think like 90% of the AFL teams had a good draft. And I mean, how couldn't you? It was a very, very deep AFL draft. But you know what? I guess we'll start off with the first team. We've got the Adelaide Crows, who I actually gave them a B, very close to a B+, because I thought they took pretty much nearly the exact player they needed to. Again, I think maybe Jagger Smith would have been a cool option for them, but he, of course, got taken at pick 3 to Carlton. But the guy I really liked in this draft was Sid Draper, and it also helped that this man is from South Australia, so you get a really, really good, clever ball user, athletic player, I think pretty good two-way runner come into your team. Was just a really good draft pick in general. And again, he's from South Australia. He comes in and helps his midfield that does need some good ball use as well. So again, they couldn't have done much more. The thing is, they would have got a higher grade if I think they had more picks, and they of course nailed those picks. Like if they had an early second round pick and they brought in another really good midfielder that just fell somehow, I think would have got them a higher grade. But it's a small sample size. I think they only took 2 players, and Sid Draper was one of them, and that's a good start. But again, Brisbane now, I gave them an A. I mean, how couldn't you give them an A or a really elite grade? They, of course, got Levi Ashcroft pretty much for free. Arguably the best player in the whole entire draft. Again, premiership player now as their best. He absolutely killed it for Sandringham. And then again, I say arguably the best because they actually then drafted the bloke who got best on in Sam Marshall, who, again, he got best on for that Sandringham team in that grand final. They got him in the 20s, really, really good young player now who comes in a part of their academy. Again, both of these guys could be playing a lot of AFL football this season in a premiership team. Like the depth over there at Brisbane, they won the flag with like 5 players from their best 22 missing through injuries like Kitty Coleman, etc. And they're going to add more through the draft. That Brisbane team, wouldn't be surprised if they went on a freaking historical run and just won like 3 premierships. Again, Carlton, I've gone with a B+. I think them trading up in arguably the best draft that we've seen in a long time. Super smart to do. They, of course, took Jagger Smith, who one of the best players in this draft class. Absolute ball magnet who's going to come in and help them so much. Again, I talked about previously their midfield being 2 dynamical, and is that a word? I don't even know. 2 one-dimensional is probably the right word. Again, they had too many tall midfielders, too many contested, just clearance players, and that was like literally all they did. They, of course, decided to switch it up. They moved on from Matt Kennedy. They're going to be bringing Adam Chera back from injury, hopefully. And now they've just added Jagger Smith, who, again, there were probably better ball users available, like Sid Draper, but he kind of ticks every box for you. He just moves around the ground so great. He could probably eventually turn into a really good two-way runner. The thing is, he's going to be an absolute ball-winning beast who's going to come in, and his disposal is still pretty good. So, yeah, you take that if you're Carlton, and we could be looking at this as you're seeing arguably one of the best players in the draft class. He's just gone to a team that wants to win a premiership. So, great move. Again, Collingwood, this is a hard team to rank because they didn't have really a first round pick or a second round pick. So I was thinking about giving them a C just because they didn't really do anything. But then I remembered, you know what? They traded away all of these first round picks and all these picks that they got in arguably one of the better drafts that we've seen in a long time. And they're going to be one of the teams, the only team really, that's going to walk out with no high profile picks. They're really relying on their age. I've given them a D+ because I think it's such a missed opportunity not to draft in this draft. Like, how could you not? And yeah, they had a lot of really late players. I think most of their picks were like in the 60s, which you're going to be pretty spot on to be able to nail them. So yeah, they're just going to have to hope that the players that they've brought in are going to be successful for them because, yeah, it's a rough period. Again, Essendon also had a weird draft. I gave them a C. Again, I think they just kind of got forced into trading away their first round pick because if they didn't, Isaac Keiko was going to get selected before it and they were probably going to lose it. So at the end of the day, they have 2 first round picks in next year's draft, which is a much weaker draft, and a draft class where they could have probably had 2 first round picks. They ended up only having 1, and that was at pick 14, but they could have had, like, again, a top 10 pick and now pick 14. So it was very unfortunate for them. It's just like the situation they got put in. I know a lot of people are giving them a worse grade, but I think better for the doubt to them. They got into a tough situation, and look, end of the day, they've still got their first round pick player, and they now have 2 first round picks next year. It's not all doom and gloom like what a lot of people say. So again, I don't mind it for them. Again, Fremantle, I'd probably give them a B. They, of course, traded away a lot of first round picks to get a guy like Shea Bolton in, which I think was the right move. But yeah, I still think, in my personal preference, I would have maybe tried to get a key defender like a Luke Trainer, but they clearly just saw a guy in Murphy Reid who slipped so far down the draft class that they were like, we got to take this man because he could be an absolute steal for us. And I think he slipped because a lot of teams were scared or not if he could become a really good midfielder in the game. But as we've seen, a lot of teams do think he could be a good forward in the game. That's kind of the role he played. He was always a midfielder that could go down forward and play as like a pressure guy, but also a clever guy who can move up the ground. I think he'll do that for Fremantle. I don't know if he'll play that early on, but Fremantle were linked to bringing in a small forward like a Joe Berry. They didn't exactly get their guy, but they brought in one in Murphy Reid who could come in and just play that role, but then also move up into the midfield later on in his career. So, I mean, yeah, great move. I probably still would have gone a backman, but you can't not take him if he's right there. So yeah, I like that. You also got GWS. I gave them a C+. I really like the Hannaford pick by them, a good young small forward. I really don't know much about their other picks, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. A lot of them were, I know, bolters, and they have been doing that as of late, and they haven't worked out just yet, but it's only been like 1 or 2 years, so we'll see how they go. That's a too early to tell kind of team. Again, Geelong, I gave them a B, and I just wrote on my notes, trust the process, because they selected a ton of bolters and a ton of, like, really, I think some of the experienced, mature players again. But the thing is, the reason I gave them a higher grade than GWS is because it's like, Geelong are proven. Like, they take bolters all the time, and they always end up good. So GWS, I don't know if their bolters will be good. I mean, one of these dudes that Geelong took that were not ranked is probably going to be playing in the next premiership team. So, yeah, I gave them a B just because how can you grade Geelong bad considering their track record on bolters is just so insane. And they took a couple again, so it is what it is. You've also got Gold Coast now. The last one I'll be talking about today, I gave them a B+ because they ended up getting Leo Lombard, who some people have as a top 5 pick in this year's draft, while also managing to, I think, move into next year's draft and have like 3 first round picks. They did that, of course, in the previous trade period. So I wouldn't be surprised if Gold Coast were really actively going after another great player again. We know Damien Hardwick was able to talk Daniel Rioli into coming to them this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Damien Hardwick was like really starting to convince some other players to come. Maybe like they probably need an elite small forward. If there's one of them out there somewhere, again, I wouldn't be surprised if Damien Hardwick was talking that guy up and was like, look, we got a bunch of first round picks to trade for you. You come to our team and we'll, of course, make it happen. So Gold Coast in this draft drafted an elite young kid, but also in the previous trade now moved to being an elite draft hand next year. They did absolutely everything right. So I'm pretty happy with what they did. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. How would you guys grade this draft? Do you guys agree with what I've said or do you guys not? Again, subscribe to my gaming channel, my IRL/vlogging channels. All of them will be getting linked in the description down below. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I guess I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.